Will age verification come to a Linux distro near you? Let's go ahead and talk about this interesting dumpster fire that's been going on. Thanks for checking out this video by Switch to Linux. If you like this type of content, subscribe to the channel. If you've not already done so, leave us a like and a comment down below. And so, of course, I talked last week about the Colorado bill, and I had mentioned the California bill, and then everybody and their brother started talking about the California bill. And I think many people may have forgotten that, once again, Switch to Linux was so far above the debate on everyone else. We actually discussed the California bill 4 months ago, before it was even enacted. Now, we didn't cover it in the same phrasing that it's talked about now, because I was comparing the California bill with the Texas bill, which the Texas bill is downright 1984 dystopian, and the California bill is just bad. So that is actually a video I did 4 months ago, the Lone Star Surveillance State, talking about their bill. But before we get there, of course, It's Foss asked this question: age verification, is this really about protecting the children, or is this about a surveillance? And this is a complicated question to answer. Obviously, first and foremost, we have to say, if this is all about protection, why don't we start arresting the people that we have solid evidence of were on this famous island, no matter what party they're in, no matter who they are. And, you know, if they have a bunch of money, civil asset forfeiture. You know, if we start doing civil asset forfeiture on a bunch of the top powerful people, maybe we can change those laws too while we're at it. You know, you do the civil asset forfeiture on a Gates and on a Bezos and on a Clinton, we can pay off the national debt. I mean, where is the problem here, folks? But of course, one of the challenges we have is that the way the California and the Colorado bill are structured, there is no external verification. Effectively, it is meant for the parent to have the ability to set up the device and indicate what the age is of that device. So if there's no children in the home, you just set it up and say 18 plus, and no problem. And if you are setting up for a child, you can hit that age date, whatever it happens to be, and you can set it up and no problem. And the problem becomes that the developer now has to rewrite all of its code. The operating system has to rewrite all of its code in order to even come close to complying with this law, because it's put together by a bunch of morons who have no concept of how software works or how operating systems work or what these even are. These are the guys that when you're talking to them and you talk about, you know, like what browser are you using? I use Google. Google is not a browser. Google is a search engine. If you can't answer that basic question, you shouldn't be making any laws about this. You know, that's the problem going on here, because they're thinking clearly they have in their mind a Windows computer, an Apple computer, an iPhone, an Android phone. That's all they have in their mind as they're talking about these things. They have no concept that you could pick up a computer or pick up a phone and put an alternative operating system on it, and that you could download that from some server in some foreign country that you have zero jurisdiction over, and then you can install software packages built by the guy in Nebraska that's holding up the entirety of the internet. If that guy in Nebraska says, nah, I'm killing the program right now because I'm not rewriting the program to check for an age, and the entire internet collapses worse than Cloudflare on a bad DNS day. I mean, really? But we have to ask this question, because the other arguments I've heard a lot of people say this week is this rule as it is right now, where the parent sets the age, is just the slippery slope to be like, let's go with the Texas way. Let's have an external verification. And that's why I did in my first video, why I talked about the Texas law being worse than the California. And the California law and the Colorado law, the person setting up the operating system chooses that. Presumably that should be the parent of a child who's not 18 years of age. In Texas, however, it had to be an external verification. You know, that thing like Discord that leaked out 70,000 photo IDs of everybody and is still causing a ripple right now. And that is one of those fun facts that the Texas bill was so dystopian, it kind of got itself adjuncted. Now, a lot of people saying, well, that was shut down. No, it was adjuncted. If you don't know what that means that the law is still there, but it is not enforceable until the court rules. Now, Mississippi has a similar law that the judge allowed to go forward, and they didn't injunct it, even though they think it's going to fail on its merits because the people asked for the injunction, put a period in the wrong spot or something stupid, which is totally weird. But if we now get these operating systems, and then we find that kids are still being hurt by these operating systems because nobody verified who they are. Now the next step is going to be the Texas law. Now we have to verify it with an external source. And so it is a tool for surveillance in disguise. Because again, if this were about protecting the children, let's clean the house and get all the sausage and pizza lovers thrown in the prison, civil asset forfeiture, and let's go ahead and pay off the national debt. Everybody wins. Everybody wins. Okay. Obviously, that's never going to happen. And the question we have to ask here is, will it ever happen that Linux, as by and large, is going to be asking for your ID on the computer setup? Do they have to? What are the issues about it? And those are the questions that I wanted to talk about and ponder as I go through this. And I actually wrote down a lot of interesting thoughts here, which I should do that more often. I do my videos completely off the cuff, which is probably part of my personality many people like, but there's a good benefit to thinking about it and organizing thoughts. So, first question I have to ask is, does this apply to Linux or not? We want to ask, does this mean the computers that they sell are going to have to be locked, that we can no longer access any ability to install something else? Does a Google phone has to be completely locked? And Android in general have to be completely locked? Do you have to kill Lineage? Do you have to kill Graphene? Do you have to kill every ROM company out there from your phones? Do we have to kill every Linux distribution or make sure that the only computers have Linux on them come pre-installed from some factory somewhere? These are all questions. Now, here is the really interesting thing that some people are not mentioning, is that these bills, the penalty, which is a $7,500 penalty, is only triggered if a child accesses inappropriate information. And that has to be brought actually by the parent, which is an interesting thing. So it basically produces a system by which the parent let a child onto an operating system without properly monitoring what the kid was doing, and now the parent wants to abdicate its own responsibility to the state or some of the resource because that's what we have been trained to do. Oh, we can't teach our kids anything at home. You gotta send them to school. Oh, your church people? Let me tell you, an abomination in my mind is children's church. You should be worshiping with your children in your church with you. They should be sitting in the pews about that. Okay, Sunday school, that's where you give them all that age-appropriate stuff. But here's what we do. We pass them off to the youth pastor, pass them off to the children's minister. And when it comes to sports, we don't take our kids out and throw a baseball anymore. We pass them off to the coach. We pass the child all the way through, no child left behind, so that every child is now left behind, which is why the academic rates in America approaches idiocracy. And that really happens to be the thing we need to think about. And this is interesting to me because what it basically does is says, hey, the parent has to have the ability to set the operating system as mandated by the law in a way that makes no sense to anybody that understands how a computer functions. Fascinating. Fascinating. You see, here's a better approach. Keep your children off the internet. And maybe we just need to pass a law that says if your child is harmed by something on the internet, it's your problem, not society's problem. Because the internet is not a place for children. They should be completely monitored on the internet. But let's go and address this question. Does this apply to Linux? We're going to look at the California version of the bill. It is very, very close to the one in Colorado. The relevant verbiages are the same, and the reason I'm doing this is because the Colorado one is still in committee, and the California one is signed into law, okay, which goes into effect in January. And so looking at just a couple definitions, what is a developer? A developer means a person that owns, maintains, or controls an application, which is, that one guy in Nebraska that's holding up the entirety of the internet, and you want to tell him he now has to rewrite his program to check for your age? He ain't doing it. He'll just walk away. Like, it ain't worth it. And then everybody and their brother who relied on that one application, and that's how Cloudflare collapses frequently. Okay, an operating system provider means a person or entity that develops, licenses, or controls an operating system software on a computer, mobile device, or any other general purpose computing device. So this covers every application that exists and every operating system that exists. I was thinking, does this only apply to what is pre-installed on that computer? No, it's any operating system, which is the foolish part. So the operating system provider must do these following things. You have to provide an interface and account setup that requires the account holder to indicate the birth date, age, or both if of that user of the device for the purpose of providing a signal. Now, in the California and Colorado bill, that is up to the person setting it up. I picked up a normie device the other day because I have a project of which needs one. I open the thing up and it says, is this for a 13? Is this for a 16, 18, or is this for 18 plus? And I simply had to push 18 plus. Done. Okay. No big deal. So that, of course, was there. Now, the Texas bill, what the Texas bill tried to do in your Lone Star surveillance state is they tried to say, hey, you have to use an external verification source, which is what the nonsense happens to be. But effectively, you install Linux, you boot it up to create the first account, and you have to ask, hey, what's the age of the person? All right. And then the operating system has to have a means for any application that is installed to provide the signal back to the application to say what age range it is. Allegedly, I guess, so that an application has no technical ability to run on something on a computer that is outside of the range that is being asked for. Okay. And so that really is what's going on here. And so now you're basically saying that you have to have a means to collect an age and then pass that age signal on to an application. Of course, there's the brackets. Now, again, this is self-attested. You're just booting it up and you're selecting something, which means if you buy the iPhone for the kid and hand it to them and they're the one that opens the box up and sets it up, they're going to push 18 plus, and then they're going to see all these bad things, and then they're going to get caught up in character AI, and character AI is going to tell them something inappropriate, and then the parents are going to scream, oh, my children, and then California, but he wasn't supposed to do that. And that's what leads to the slippery slope that the Texas law would come into effect. Hey, now we need to verify the age of that user. That's the thing we need to worry about. But again, even that becomes almost unenforceable because you're either 18 plus and you have the ability to prove that, or you're not, in which case the entirety of the internet becomes G-rated unless you provide your ID. Discord style. Join us over on Matrix because Discord sucks. Find Switch to Linux and the Matrix channels over there. So if you're looking around at Discord alternatives, you can look us up over there. We have a bunch of rooms to chat in. Now, the developer shall request the signal from the operating system whenever it is downloaded and launched. Okay, so again, these buffoons that think when I ask them what web browser they're using and they tell me Google because they don't understand the difference between a web browser and a search engine, these people seem to think that every application has to be downloaded and run from the App Store because they're blithering idiots. They have no idea how technology works, and they have no concept that you could go on to some weird random place on the internet and download SimCity 2000 from a .exe file and install it into your operating system with no interaction. I still have SimCity 2000. It's in my backup files. I saw it the other day, and I was playing it, and it was awesome. Man, that's a good game. These modern sim games, they suck. SimCity 2000, baby. All right. But the developer has to go back and it has to request this age. So a developer that receives a signal to this title shall be deemed to have actual knowledge of the age range. Okay, so what this part says, I'm going to read all that, but it basically says, hey, you assume that the operating system is correct on the age unless you have collected data that tells you to the contrary. Okay, so if they've given you your birth date of here and then everyone's telling you happy birthday on your profile somewhere else and they pick up on that, you say, well, is that really your birthday? And that's really is what that boils down to. And they say that the developer receiving the signal shall use the signal to comply with the law. Now, what I didn't know when I did the Colorado video a couple days ago is, does this have a retroactive clause? And the answer is yes, meaning every operating system in the state of California after January 1st. So if it's already installed prior to January 1st, they have 6 months. They have until July 1st to implement this. So every operating system on every device in the state of California has to have asked for the age and have a means for every application running on every device in the state of California to have that verified by July, which is utter nonsense. It is not going to happen. And you're going to have the very same thing that Louis Rossmann talks about with that, the anti-consumer laws in there, which are saying, hey, if you're offering a lifetime download, it has to be lifetime. And he had a ton of people send them complaints to say, hey, they're only giving me 5 years, not lifetime. And you only hear crickets back from the state, which means they may not be enforcing this, just like they're probably not enforcing that, but it gives them the ability to. And that really is how you can, start your one world government and shut everything down. They can go in and say, hey, I just installed Linux Mint and it didn't ask me my age when I set it up. Sue them, and then we have to ask the question, which we will ask later, if this is enforceable or not. But so to look at the first questions, does this apply to Linux? According to the letter of the law, it would appear to apply to Linux. Does this mean every computer will have to be locked down like phones? No, not necessarily. It's just anything you install on your system is going to have to have this system in place if you wanted to comply with this crazy nonsensical law, which is utterly unenforceable. Now, what it's not in my notes, and I will have to say here, is that the only way that this is going to stop is it's going to take some big company to want to challenge it, because I think it would fail on a constitutional level. I totally would fail, because First Amendment rights, I as a programmer would have a First Amendment right to express my software how I want. The government has no ability to control that speech. This would completely and easily fail on constitutional grounds. But is a small Linux distro with 100 downloads going to be challenging it? Nope. It's going to have to be one of the big guys, which means we might have to rely on the mercy of a Red Hat or a Canonical or any other huge corporation that could go against this and challenge it. But the question is, would they care? The only way Red Hat could is that I did not see the exceptions in here that I did in Colorado. So it might be in here, but I didn't see it when I was listening. So let's see, on applications. Oh yeah, no, it does. Okay, operating system provider or cover application shall comply with this, including but not limited by complying with it. Okay, that is good. No, this does not actually appear to have the exceptions. Now, it still has the broadband telecommunications and delivery or use of a physical product. It has those, which are in the Colorado, but the Colorado bill has an extra thing that says this law does not apply to a piece of software which is entirely inside of a business, presumably because this is all about protecting the children. Even though we don't want to protect the sausage and pizza eaters, we don't want to protect those guys, but we want to stop you from allowing your child to run a game that you don't care if he plays, because you're, being a good parent. And let me just stop. I mean, I know this video is going to be super long already. And I know all you guys in the comments, the last video, this is so long. You guys, your brains have been rotted from shorts. Okay. Y'all need to come back and watch good videos again. Please just ban shorts, block shorts. If you're thinking like, this is too long, get to the point. Your brain has been rotted by shorts. You don't need to tell me that. I'm just going to tell you that your brain is rotting from shorts, okay? Okay, I used to be a college professor. I was a chemistry professor. I'm long-winded. Deal with it. And I'm going to tell you that personal story. Because for a long time, I believed that playing first-person shooter games was ultimately bad for the kids. But when I was mentoring some kids from particularly bad homes, playing first-person shooter games was on the lowest list of priorities to things to help them with. And so I let them, and I said, well, let me play. Let me have experience. And what I found is I was able to build a tremendous relationship with all of those kids by playing Black Ops with them. Okay. And it didn't matter. And frankly, as long as they were doing that and we were having conversations and we were talking and we were expressing thoughts and feelings, guess what? While I was in those kids' lives, they weren't out doing crazy stuff. It was an interesting thing. And so I had to change that view of mine for a while. But my point being is that it's not the rating of the video game. Oh, that kid's 13. He can't play a 17 rated game. It's that the parent needs to be involved in the kid's life. And then the parent can choose. Some kids can watch R-rated movies. Some kids can't. I watched every horror movie you can think of before I was 10. It didn't mess me up, except The Fly. The Fly messed me up. I don't know why, but The Fly messed me up. Everything else, Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger and all that. Now, it has some negative consequences in other areas, but it didn't be like, I wasn't like, is Freddy going to get me in my dreams? No, I didn't care. My brother couldn't watch those things, and which was kind of problematic because we couldn't watch them together. But the fact is, some kids can take it, some kids can't, and the parent is the arbiter of that, not the state. All right, that's point one. Oh boy, this is going to be long. All right, point two. I wanted to talk about this. Now, I covered this, and I did talk about this, so let's go back and talk about this Lone Star State here. I covered this California bill in this video from a different perspective. So Texas, as I said, required an external verification. California and Colorado only require the technical capabilities of the developer and the operating system passing that information, but it's up to the parent to set the exact age. All right. Now, the problem is downstream impacts. Again, once kids, after this law is passed and once kids start still being negatively impacted, then they're going to go in the Texas route for sure. But the question now is this going to affect downstream Linux? Well, it very well may, and it very well is. Midnight BSD, and I watched this happen in real time over there on X on Friday or Thursday night after the news. I'll hang out over there on X and post a bunch of funny Linuxy and computer type memes. Like usually just reposting stuff, commenting on things, being a technical, weird, snarky dude on X. That's great. But I was there when he announced this at first. He's like, hey, this is coming over. And what he is going to do here, I assume it's a he. I have no idea. And I couldn't actually access their website today. I don't know if it went down from too much traffic or whatever else. But he is actually changing his license, and he is changing his license to exclude California residents from using Midnight BSD for desktop use effective on the date that the law goes into effect. Now, this is actually, in my opinion, this might actually be the route that saves Linux. Here's why. Okay. When you download a Linux distribution, you are taking full responsibility for everything that goes on. I can't help it if they broke the California law. They broke my terms of service. You have to go for them against the breaking the terms of service. And they're like, do you want to go after him for breaking the terms of service? No, I don't think I will, but he just broke it. From what I see, it short circuits this law. It's just like, California residents, you can't use Midnight BSD. Now, does that mean California residents are going to stop using Midnight BSD? If they're already using it, I bet they won't. I bet they won't care. I bet they'll look at that. I mean, heck, who reads licenses anyway? So Midnight BSD is actually taking this approach to basically say, hey, you're not authorized to use Midnight BSD. And he's leaving it at that. And he said, people asked him on X, what about the Colorado? He says, well, if that passes and comes into law, I'll add Colorado. What if every nation in the world adds it? Well, I guess I'll just say you're not allowed to use this. Will people still use it? Yeah, who reads this anyway? But it gets everybody off the hook, doesn't it? It now just produces that classic example, and you got three Spider-Men pointing at each other. You got the parent pointing back at the government and back at Midnight BSD, and Midnight BSD is pointing at the government and the parent, and then the Californians pointing at both of them, and neither one are going, ain't my problem. He's violating my terms. He wasn't supposed to install it. But yeah, do you want to enforce? No. This might be the solution. I don't know. I ain't a lawyer, but this might be the solution. And so this is one of the impacts. Of course, System 76 in the belly of the beast of Colorado is debating what they're going to do. And what they have said here is that they are going to comply with the law if it comes into effect, even though they hate it. Now, they said that they actually haven't said how they're going to do this. And this raises some questions. Of course, System 76 not only manufactures computers and pre-installs Linux, they are also the developer of the distro Pop OS and the desktop environment Cosmic. So, if System 76 needs to comply with this, when you either get your System 76 computer or install Pop OS on your device, it's going to have to ask you to comply with this law, hey, how old are you? Now, the question is this something that System 76 does custom on their computer? Is this something they do on their distro? Or is this something they put in Cosmic OS? Because, Cosmic oftentimes manages, or the desktop environment oftentimes manages your user accounts, even though it may not be the best way to do that. The latest Linux Mint blog brought that up. That was about a month ago or so. And he did have some statements in there about users saying that, hey, it should be up to the distro to figure out how to manage users on your system, not the desktop environment. And so that's an interesting statement there, because now are we going to have a separate tool? Is this going to be some plug-in tool, probably developed by GNOME? And GNOME is going to have this thing that everybody uses, and now everybody's going to have to use the GNOME age attestation. It's just going to be a tool that anybody can just sloppily throw into their distro. Now, they might, though, handle it like MP3 codecs. Remember, for a long time, MP3 was not an open platform like it is now. And distros, Debian never installed it. You'd have to go in and manually do it yourself. Ubuntu and Linux Mint, they would say, hey, you may or may not be able to install this in this jurisdiction. What if it's something like that? We get a simple package. It allows you to install an age attestation reporting mechanism inside of the system that's up to the developers now to figure out how to use, but it's up to you whether you want to install it or not. Hey, do you want to install this or not? And a little note, hey, if you're in certain states, you might have to install this to comply with the law. But again, the only way the law is in effect is if a child is negatively impacted by a piece of software. So as an adult with no children in the house, you can skip that box and it doesn't matter anymore, which is an interesting thing to think about. So how is this going to work? Midnight BSD says, hey, you're just not licensed to use it in the state of California. System 76, I don't know. Are they going to put it on the computer? Are they going to put it on the distro? Or are they going to put it on the desktop environment? That's an interesting question. And so the next question I want to get into is who is liable for following these laws? Is it that one guy in Nebraska that's propping up the entirety of the internet and everyone right now is just dissing him? I mean, he's like, I ain't rewriting the software to ask for your age, buddy. I got enough to do over here. Well, you can't do that. Okay, I'm pulling the code. The Jenga tower has just collapsed. The guy in Nebraska stopped developing his code. Okay, it's over. The internet has been, it was fun while it lasted, folks, but it's done. Is the distributor of the software liable? But let's not forget, how does Linux work? We got the people who write it. We have mirrors all over the country. Some of those mirrors are governments. Are governments going to have this? If I download a software application that hasn't been updated in 6 years and won't be updated in the next 6 years to not comply with the law, and it's hosted on a government site, is California now going to go sue the government for hosting a mirror to a software that didn't comply with the law? Because don't forget, the distribution is in that law. Let's go back up and find that again. So the developer is the person who owns, maintains, or controls an application. If it is any repository that I am grabbing from a university or a government agency, they are the one maintaining or controlling the application, right? And there's other means you can do that. The developer, the distributor, or the mirror. The mirror could be a company, a college, or a government. Are all these mirrors going to suddenly disappear? Or is every university going to sit down and go, nah, it's just not worth hosting Linux anymore? How about the whole state of California? What happens when the whole state of California collapses because they look down and realize it's impossible to comply with this law? But we might be in too deep. I don't know. This is why I made a comment on a video recently. Y'all are sometimes mad I get into some of the politics. The fact that you're not getting some of the politics is why this happened. I talked about this bill before it came into effect. But you're like, he's talking politics. When you don't watch what's going on, this is what happens. Think about that. Y'all weren't paying attention. That's how this happened. Y'all weren't involved. Y'all weren't doing the Clippy thing. Y'all sat there and got mad but never did anything. You never told anyone about it. You never talked to your congressman about it. You never went to a town council about it. Go do the Clippy thing. Do something. So, last but not least, we come to the jurisdictional enforceability. Okay, how enforceable or unenforceable is this? First is jurisdiction. Yeah, let's drag a guy over into into court from who's developing some software in UK or something. Ask the UK how that's working with Reddit. We're gonna fine you. That's fine. We're not gonna pay it. We don't own or operate anything in UK. Your people are coming over here to get the stuff. We don't care. Okay, that's what's happening. Ooh, the king is mad at me. The king of a country I'm not part of. So, and yeah, they're issuing fines, but I have a sneaky suspicion, you're going to pay that fine right about the same time the federal government stops the guys in third world countries from calling us on our phones to talk to us about our extended warranty. Okay. So you keep on asking for that money, UK. I bet you ain't getting it. Okay. How about the distribution of the software? Okay. This law, as they're trying to do it, rewrites every functional way computers work. Is the state of California really in the position to sit here and be like, y'all need to rewrite everything you do? Everything on the entirety of the internet now must function like an iPhone. Didn't we just have a law saying an iPhone was a monopoly? We need to have other ways to install software. I don't know. I think that was even in California. I don't know. Will this even be enforced on a FOSS device that you install yourself? I mean, I picked a computer up with Windows 11 and Windows 11 sucked, and I wiped it out and installed Linux Mint. Is this going to be enforced on some operating system? Like, what if I don't want to go through this? What if I look at this and go, I don't care about any of this kind of stuff? Even if I have kids in the house, I don't care because, brainwave, I actually pay attention to what my kids are doing on the internet. I don't know, and so can this be enforced if you install the software yourself? The way the law is written, it seems like it can be, but it is a particularly destructive system for things like System 76, which manufacture computers and install the software on them. Of course, joke's on them. Do they think everything has to be downloaded through a software store? You can't limit it down like that. I mean, I guess if the entire Linux world goes to the immutable desktops and you can only access things through like the Snap Store or something, now the Snap Store has to comply with this. And, is the Snap Store about to want to do age checks? That new system they have in place kind of predates that. So I don't know. Maybe they were onto something. Dell sells HP. They all sell computers, which you can get pre-installed with Linux. Those guys will have issues for sure. But your own system that you bought, you made the decision to wipe it out. You made the decision to install something. Why in the world would you even need this law? And how can you even enforce it? This is a crazy situation. This is a crazy time to be alive. And I don't really have a lot of answers. But you know what? A law has been passed. A law can be repealed. Maybe that's the best approach right now. California. Okay, let's map the game plan. If you're in Colorado or you have any poll in Colorado, you need to kill that bill before it makes it out. You're in Texas, you need to do the same thing. Now, I think the Texas one passed and it's being held up in courts. Mississippi, same thing with that one. That one passed, but it's not being held up in the courts, which puts it in a crazy state. Utah, of course, has one. California, the guys in California, Mississippi, Texas, you guys need to absolutely start going crazy on every legislator in the state. Get them to overturn this law. Say, hey, we passed a law. We didn't understand it. It's nonsense. We're repealing the law. That's what has to happen here. And it's got to happen before everybody starts to create a giant mess in the entirety of the system. Those are the types of things that we need to do. This is an interesting world. And I'm going to keep on plugging along as best as I can plug along. And I'm not complying with anything that wants an ID. If some system like that normie device that has got, asks a question, yeah, of course I'm over 18. You approve it? No. Nope, not proving it. We'll take it back before we have to prove it. But those are the things. We have to take solid stances. And for the love people, we need to pay attention, not to the right versus the left, not to the Democrat versus the Republican. Stop getting on the nonsense. Both sides have passed these bills. We need to be laser focused on the areas of our specialization. And when we're talking here about computers, we have to be talking about laser focused on shutting down all of this crazy nonsense, because it's unenforceable. You can't do it. And the guy in Nebraska is going to rage quit, and then the entire internet's going to collapse, and then everyone's going to look around the rubble and go, what happened? Don't let that happen to the world. Let me know your thoughts about all this in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Again, subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. Have a look at the website, switchedtolinux.com/support, if you want to help learn how you can support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy switching to Linux.